Senior HR Project Manager. I think I got that right in Genet and Tech. And we're really excited to have you here today as part of our Reimagine Me Career Month. I'm going to hand over to Cara, and we're really excited to talk to you today.
Thanks, Tasha. Yeah, so I requested to just be able to say a welcome in a few words, Leyla, because we're just so excited that you're able to join us for this session. So for everybody else here, because you may not know Leyla, although she's going to obviously introduce herself and we'll hear a little bit more about her career, we managed to cross paths with each other through this Accelerate Talent Exchange because we were really looking for somebody to help support with both our internal and external communications. And I just love that, Leyla contacted us and said she was interested, even though this is, over and above all the things that she's doing right now and on all the responsibilities she has at home too. So it's just been such a wonderful opportunity for us to have a different perspective and really leverage on your capabilities, Leyla, and all the experiences and the background that you bring, but also the fact that, we get to connect with somebody who's a Filipina, somebody else, somewhere else in the world, and still have that opportunity, right? So I feel like you're such a great example of this Reimagine Me concept. And so I'm just so pleased that we get to hear more about your story today, because that's something that I'm really interested in learning at a deeper level too. So just a big thank you for your time, and I'll hand it back over to Tasha for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cara. That was such a great intro and something that I definitely think that we can explore a little bit more, which is how we did manage to cross paths with Leyla, and how, people can really open up their world through those kind of options. But we won't rush to there. We might start with a few fun questions, Leyla. So the first question that we've got for you is, when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was a child, I wanted to be a lawyer and also a journalist. So I've always been so inquisitive by nature, and I love advocating for people's rights. And so that gravitated me towards those two paths. And obviously I didn't end up as a lawyer or a journalist. But yeah, those were my dreams when I was little.
Oh, wow. And tell us a little bit about where you did grow up.
Oh, I grew up in the Philippines. I was born and raised there. It's a place called Las Piñas. I lived in Pilar Village in Las Piñas, in the south area, as we call it. And I grew up there, and I left the Philippines until I was 23 years old and came here in the U.S.
Wow. And so tell us a little bit about your career journey then, because I think it started in the Philippines, didn't it? But it's grown over into the US, and it'd be interesting to see that you're from where you started to where you are now.
Yeah, so definitely I'm very fond of the Philippines, and this is why I pursued an opportunity to volunteer there. And my heart, a big piece of me is still in the Philippines. So yes, I graduated college there, and then after college I went to law school for 1 year and realized that wasn't for me. And so I went into the corporate world. I worked for Landco Pacific, and I helped build shopping centers and business parks. I also got a little bit exposure in doing their resorts, like the Punta Fuego and Canyon Woods. They own a lot of this real estate developments, and so that's how I started my journey there. And then from there, I applied to take my MBA in finance here in the US.
Wow. And so you started, I guess, in an organization which is business development, but you've actually then, I guess, using the skills that you've got, worked across different industries and I guess even different professional areas to now be in HR today. How did you find making those transitions?
Yes, when I tell people my story, like, they couldn't believe the journey or the trajectory. Just because I when I started in the Philippines, it was more a business development, to your point, Natasha. And actually back then, I didn't realize that it was actually project management, and there was no name for it. Or I was just like doing everything from finance to marketing to selling, and building shopping center. And so, oh, sorry. And then from there, after my MBA, I ended up in a job where that's how I handled HR, or human resources, operations, and finance. And from broad perspective, it became built in within me to not just be in one area or in one scope. It's always because of the beginnings of project management and business development in the Philippines. I got used to having a lot of different scopes all at once. And then also my first job after MBA was also 3 different areas as well, all at once.
Wow, that's exciting. And so tell us a little bit about your current role and what do you love most about it?
Oh, where to begin? I mean, first of all, like, it's just the reason why I went to Genentech is because it's such a great place to work, or to Roche, it's such a great place to work. And although my background is started in operations, my heart and my soul are really with the people, and that's what I love the most about what I do. It's every single day, every minute of my day, I know that I'm giving back to the people through my job. Like every time we have a discussion, it's all about what are best for the employees, what will make sense for the patients. So that's what I love the most. It's because my passion and my time and where I work are all in the same values as myself.
Wow, perfect. Actually, I think that really builds in well to our next question, which is or our next topic, which is about Reimagine Me, which is the career philosophy that we're embracing within Roche, about personalized professional journeys that, you know, value expertise, experience, and mindset. But really, at the heart of it, it's where my fulfillment meets our purpose. You know, so where our individual fulfillment meets the purpose of the company. And I think what you started to say then really builds into that. And so when you hear that word, you know, where my fulfillment meets our purpose, what does that mean to you?
I feel like that is the ultimate self-fulfillment. Like, I see a pyramid, right? Like, in terms of your hierarchy of self. And when your passion meets your purpose and where you work, I mean, that is nirvana. That is the self-fulfillment. Like, work doesn't even feel like work anymore. And it's almost like, even if you feel like you are working, you're giving to the company, but somehow it goes back multiple times back to you, feeding your soul, feeding your purpose. And it's almost like an enlightening of oneself, I would say.
Yeah, perfect. I guess to get to where you are today in the role that you're in, you know, we all have, I guess, peak experiences through our journey. You know, it might be a role, or it might just be a particular situation, you know, where we really learned. What would some of your peak experiences be in your professional journey so far?
In Genentech, or
all over the whole career journey. Yeah.
Peak experience. Definitely for me, my first job, like building shopping centers and business parks in areas, and I'm gonna mention some local areas like Lucena, Legazpi, and Cabanatuan. Those are the 3 business parks that I helped build. That's a peak for me because one of the purposes of those is to give jobs to the local people so that they don't have to go to Manila, be away from their families. We can provide a place for businesses and people to have jobs in their own locality. So for me, that's my high peak for me. And then it took many, many years before I felt the same peak. It was when I was the chief of staff for the chief HR officer and the SVP of internal communications in Blue Shield, where it's a trajectory between before I was only seen as, oh, it's a hard work, you're a hard worker, you can do a lot. But this time I had a manager that was really hired me or wanted to spend time with me to hear the quality of my thinking. So it has shifted more to something more strategic, to something more influential. And because she's in that position, I see it's almost like I give an idea and I see it happening right away. It's not hidden in the organization. So I felt that was extremely powerful. And then the third peak for me is where I'm at now, where I'm volunteering in the Philippines. And they just asked me to lead the COVID task force in the Philippines as well, which is for Genentech. And then at the same time, I'm doing my day job, which is like the role as the project manager for people in culture, for commercial, medical affairs, and government affairs. And so, this is like the perfect example of what the future of learning looks like, a learning organization. And I'm in the midst of it, and I feel like I'm one of the initial adopters of it and setting an example. And I love inspiring other people that, you can do that. You can have a global role, which through my volunteer, you can have a company-wide role through the COVID lead. And at the same time, you can have a business-related role as well. So you can do all that only if you're willing to, and if you see the value in that.
Yeah, wow. I love that, Leyla. And I think a lot of the things that you've pulled out as your peak, something that I can see is the impact that you're having. So the impact that you had in terms of the business development and people being able to be local, the impact that you could have through strategic thinking and how many more people could be reached. And now the impact that you're having, in the work that you're doing across your normal role, the work that you're doing with us, and then leading the COVID task force, which I think is amazing.
Thank you.
I'm definitely keen for everyone to be able to hear a little bit more around what Cara was speaking about, which is how you got connected in with the Philippines, because I think something that our people would love to know is, how can I build my network? How can I build my exposure? How can I work on things outside the affiliate? So I'd definitely love for you to be able to share with everyone how this came about.
Yeah, I hope it, I wish I could say it's like a unicorn, a magical adventure, but it started as, Tricia Stewart at the time was still in Basel. And in her email, she literally had that link of talent acceleration in her email. And I was like, oh, out of curiosity, what is that? And I know she's been talking about Reimagine Me. And I said, maybe it's related. Like, literally no one has led me to click that link. I just saw it in her email. I clicked on it and saw that there's a lot of global opportunities. It's not just within Genentech. And so I did search for the Philippines because at that time we were in shelter in place, and most people don't want to look for work at that time in addition to their day job. But for me, I needed to feed my soul. I needed to do something that will enrich me and make me remind me of home. This is now my second home, but my first home. And thankfully, Cara had that amazing ad about the Philippine Islands, and so I just reached out, and I know that the deadline even passed, I think, at that time, and I just took that chance. I said, you know what, maybe I could help, in any capacity, and I reached out to Natasha and Cara, and we met. And that was the beginning of that story.
Oh, and it has been, amazing for us. We so appreciate your experience that you've been able to share with us. And I know that particularly the Agile ambassadors as well, who've been able to benefit from your experience, as well as others in the affiliate, have so appreciated it. So, I'm Just so happy to hear that you're getting out of it what you wanted. Oh, and Kara's doing a clap emoji too.
Yay, thank you.
I think we just met you and fell in love with you, Leyla, so, and it hasn't stopped.
Thank you. Same here. Same here.
So I want to talk a little bit as well now about leadership, because over the course of your career, you may have been a people leader, and at times not, but, just that concept around you don't have to be a people leader to be, a people leader role isn't, necessarily a promotion. You can actually get promotions without that, and that everyone really needs to be a leader, regardless of if you're a people leader or not. What are your thoughts on that and your experiences in terms of, leadership and it coming from everybody?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you, Natasha, where I've had roles where most of my role as a project manager, really, I don't have a direct report. But as a project manager also, you lead teams somehow because you're assigned a project and you need to make sure that everybody's aligned and delivering towards a certain goal. And that sometimes they call it influencing, through people that are not directly reporting to you. And I feel like that for me is even harder as than having direct reports. When I had direct reports, what I experienced, it's just so much easier to influence them because you're the manager, and so you tell them like, okay, this is what we need to meet, and they will prioritize that. When you're an individual contributor, having to move things along in a matrix organization, you really have to even deepen your relationship and influence people and have that deep connection with them through the teams to move things along in an aligned way. So even if you're not a people leader or even if you're an individual contributor, definitely leadership it's still expected of you as part of your role, I would say. And it happens as part of taking accountability in your roles and responsibilities. It's not every day or every time that you're in conversations that your manager is there. Through empowerment, I feel like you're also leading through example, and in every conversations that you have, you are a leader in that conversation, and you are representing your team, you are representing your organization.
Yeah, wonderful. And I think we can particularly see as well from the work that you're doing, you can still, your impact isn't limited by people leadership or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you could give one piece of advice on people growing their career, what would it be?
Okay, Kara, this is one of those, for me, this is tough. This is not a fun question, just kidding. I'm having I need to pause for a little bit.
That's okay. Well, while you pause, okay. I'm going to also let everyone start to think of their questions as well, because they're going to get the chance to ask you questions soon. So,
yeah, thank you for buying me time, Natasha. So, I would say a last piece of advice, like I always go back to this quote by Socrates. It's like an unexamined life is not worth living. And it's so powerful for me because it's a journey. For me, how I interpret it is, it's a journey of self-discovery, of courage, of looking yourself in the mirror and constantly reflect. Am I doing the right thing for me? Am I spending my time the right way? Am I being courageous enough? Am I being uncomfortable enough? Am I growing? Am I failing? Right? Without failing, there's no growth. Am I taking those risks? I mean, there's so many things that you can ask yourself with that quote. And I would say, like, as human beings, I feel like we have this insatiable desire to be curious and to grow and to go out there to have an adventure. Doesn't have to be an elaborate adventure, but just like discover things so that you can pass on those stories to other people, to your own family, to your own kids, to your spouse, partners, and have a very enriched life. And so I would say, examine your life. Don't be afraid to discover. Don't be afraid to embrace that we are all leaders in our own role in whatever capacity we're in. And that you're not alone, because you may be fearful, but all of us go through these fears, different fears. But through the support of each other, let's lean into each other, and know that only through being brave and taking the risk can we grow as people, as an individual, and as an organization.
Leyla, that is so inspiring.
Thank you.
I'm going to see now. We'll have a pause, and we'll see if we've got any questions from the people who have joined us today. Anything in particular that they're interested to find out in relation to your career journey, or other questions that they might have from you. Sometimes people can be a bit shy. Oh, Mon, have you got a question?
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Mon.
Hi, Leyla. I'm a lawyer, by the way, so my question goes. Yeah. So my question goes. What made you think otherwise? I mean, why didn't you pursue lawyering? And in your journey, like you were from sort of project development, and then you ended up in HR.
Yes.
What drove you, or what attracted you to do these changes and to grow? I mean, what was that? What was those factors which determined for you that, lawyering is not for me, or now I'm moving in from project or a business-oriented career. Now I'm into HR, and now I'm exploring something else.
Yeah, ask like a lawyer. For real, Mon. Yeah. First, let me answer your first question about why I didn't pursue law school. In my first year, I went to San Beda, and as I was going through my courses, there was one class where they said, well, as a lawyer, you have to defend a client, because I was interested in criminal law, and you need to defend a client even if you think that client is guilty. And I just know, Mon, that I cannot live with that. So in my mind, I'm like, why am I gonna pursue all these many years if I knew that if I get that, I may not live with that? And so I changed my path rather quickly. So after a year, I actually ended up going to the next path, which is business. And I thought about that because of my many interests. It's sort of like, okay, if law didn't work out, then maybe business is the next thing for me. And culturally, also in the Philippines, at least how I was raised, is like there was no option. It's either I go back to law school or I take a graduate study. So it's very strict how I was raised by my parents. There's no option. And for me, I've always admired, like the U.S. system, their educational system. And so I said, yeah, why not take the adventure and take my MBA there. My journey, your second question, one about my journey to HR, that took a lot longer because I really strived to become a COO in the beginning. And having that as an anchor, I'm not saying like I wanted to be that at that moment. It's more like, what is my North Star? And it helped guide my decision. Because I wanted to be a COO at that time, I looked at what are the different areas that the COO handles. And so there's finance. You need to be very well adept in finance, well adept in IT. So so in my mind, I was like checking off this these different areas that a COO needs to handle, until I have this opportunity where I met the chief HR officer, and although she didn't belong in my plan, I was intrigued by it and I was curious. I realized as I was pursuing the COO path that even if I have the best processes, even if I have the best financial acumen, if I don't know people, if I don't know how to move the culture, I will never take the organization to the right path. And then that attracted me now to learn more about people and culture. I hope that answered your question, Mark.
Yeah.
Great question, Mon. Are you going to now pursue a career in people and culture?
I've always thought about people and culture.
Oh, it's turning Mon. That's amazing. So Leyla, we actually had, we've got a couple of questions. So we've got a question from Kathy, which came up when Mon asked his, which is, how do you balance family life and work? Because you've got, I'm sure it's 4 sons, is that right?
Yes, I do have 4 kids, 12 years old, all boys, 12, 11, 9, and almost 2-year-old this October. So, yes. And the question, Kathy, how do I balance it? I would say great teamwork at home. My husband is very supportive of, for instance, at night when I would volunteer in the Philippines, he knows that we need to eat early, those kind of things. And he gives me space to do what I love to do. So, great teamwork. And also, the other thing is also boundaries, I would say. I asked a colleague before I wasn't really good in creating boundaries. And so I asked somebody who I really admire, like, how do you do it? How do you create that balance? And he said, you know what? No one will do that. No one will provide those boundaries, because people by nature, they're just going to give you work, right? As much fun, because the work will never end. And so it's up to you to say, okay, this is how, this is a protected time for me. I need a vacation day. I need to celebrate anniversaries. I need to celebrate birthdays. And it's up to you. And if you link it to your personal value, I would say, let's say if family is important to you, make that happen. And also be confident that you are a valued employee. And also know that if you do take that vacation, if you take care of yourself, you're going to give back more to the organization. And so having that mindset and knowing how successful people have done it have helped me create those boundaries as well.
Wow, that's fantastic. Now we've got lots of questions coming through, Leyla. So I'm just going to come down from in order of being asked. So from Marianne, she wants to know what motivates you the most.
It's actually the people in my work. It's the people. My husband was just asking me earlier, like, why? What is it in people in culture? What is it in your volunteer? Why do you find time for that? That really motivates you. So, and I told him that it's because as I go from one career change to another, or one role to another, like, I was not an expert. I have to learn. I mean, from finance, I had to learn IT. I had no idea how databases work, or what are these systems, what are these processes. Somebody, and even like with HR, like that CHRO, I didn't know anything about HR, those domains. But these people took a chance in me. These people spent time to teach me and believed in me. And now I realized that I wanted to do the same to these people. And for me, that's what motivates me. If I can make a difference in an area where I can broaden people's mindset that look at talent by in terms of what they're capable of, their ability and agility to learn versus what they already know. And if I can work for a company like Genentech, where we're giving medicine to patients. That's something that is wonderful, and that really motivates me every day.
Oh, that's wonderful. Leanne wants to know, what do you miss most about the Philippines?
Oh, wow. Well, in Kara's post, that's why I got attracted to it. And she mentioned about the Philippine Isle, the beaches, like I really, really love that, and the weather, and of course, like the people. I absolutely, absolutely love the people and the culture. How um, no matter how hard times are, we still find time to laugh and to be there for each other. That's something very special for me, at least in my experience with the Philippines.
Yeah. There's another question. Oh, we've got some more. So from Ty, as you didn't start in people and culture, what key challenges did you face when you moved into people and culture, and how did you overcome that?
Oh, that was a really tough experience for me to move, because I started right away as a chief of staff. And so it was a very steep learning curve. All of a sudden, I have all HR, I need to understand all HR domains all at once in that role. At the same time, align these leaders. Sorry, the question was how did I?
Yeah. So what were the challenges, and how did you overcome them? Yeah.
So that for me, that was a real challenge. The lack of knowledge, technical expertise, and at the same time, it was a role where they were experimenting, getting somebody from outside of HR to broaden people's perspective about the business. So that was incredibly hard. And how I did it has always been how I would start projects and how I help build teams, is to create that relationship with them. Be vulnerable. I was vulnerable enough to say, I am not an expert in your domain. I don't know anything about HR. At the same time, here's what I can bring to the table. Here's what I can bring in the conversation. I know project management. Also, I am here to add value to you. So how can we do this together? And how can I learn from you? So always I try to put it to start from a learning perspective, and to humble myself and to be vulnerable, to let them know I don't know anything, and at the same time telling them where maybe I can add value. Winning their trust was a key, being vulnerable, and also doing my own homework and learning the domain.
Oh, I love that, Leyla. I love how you spoke about knowing the value of what you can bring, and being vulnerable, and also doing the work. We have got loads of questions. This is so great. So our next question from Apple is, how are you able to cope with change? So for example, or work from the Philippines to SFO, from project management to people and culture. That they're quite big changes. How do you manage that?
Yeah. Hi, Apple. We just had a change management session yesterday, so I feel like it's a follow-up question. Now they ask me these questions. How it's because I got used to the changes. I got used to the fact that I'm always sometimes when I get really comfortable, I feel uncomfortable. I feel like when I'm getting complacent, I feel like, I need to do something to grow myself because I'm being too complacent. And so I started to exercise that agility to learn, where you go in a place and you have no clue how to do it. So you have to build connections. So same formula, build connections, be vulnerable enough to let people know, I want to learn from you. Can you help me? And then quickly learning more about that domain, doing your homework, sometimes reading up on some technical and knowledge-based literature, I would say. For me, those are the top three things that I do. And at the same time, I'm also giving my space opportunity to fail and expect myself to stumble along the way. So there's always learning curve, and I give my space to do that. At first, I was such a perfectionist that I feel such a failure, oh my God, I'm such a failure. But eventually I just learned, like, okay, there's no need to do that. Everybody goes through failure. And so as I mature, I just learned to just put that as part of the plan. That in the beginning, there's going to be I will stumble and fall in the beginning until I'm able to walk and run eventually.
Oh, I love that. Now, I did see Trixie had, it was Sang. So, which links into the topic of around failures. So how do you overcome failures in terms of managing expectations versus reality?
Mm-hmm. So I started to shift. So as a perfectionist, it was very hard, right? It's a really a mindset shift. So I started to shift myself to redefine what success means for me. Success could be a learning or an accomplishment. And when I shifted my mindset into that and giving myself, so there's mindset at the same time my heart, I gave compassion towards myself to say, you know what, you're not perfect, you're growing, you're uncomfortable here, and giving myself that boost of positive energy by saying, and kudos to you for being brave enough to try this. And whether you succeed or not, whether you like it or not, somehow you've grown from this experience. And so that helped me deal with failure and actually acknowledging it. Like even with my manager, I'm like, oh, that was not a good meeting, or that was something where maybe I could have done that better. And looking at it more from a third person, sort of how can I improve this, and learning from that and applying the learnings on the next experience.
Yeah, perfect. And it's just such a great topic, especially because you don't want to call it failure, but it's definitely learning. You need those to be able to continue to grow. Okay, so from Miss Trixie, most impactful learning that you can share with us from exploring one role to another.
One learning for me is, life is such an adventure. I would say just treat it as an adventure. It's a fun adventure. Don't take yourself seriously, right? Like when Mon mentioned about, why did you move from law school? Like imagine as a young child, this is your lifelong dream. So you reach college, I was like 19. All of a sudden, I'm in there. I'm like, oh my gosh, all my life. I thought I'm going to be a lawyer. So just realizing that you know what, it's an adventure. So it doesn't mean that this is the end of my life. This is the end of my journey. It's just the beginning. And honestly, once you start embracing that, it will open up more opportunities for adventure for you.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah,
Mon, have you got another question?
Yes, Mon.
No, just to comment that Leyla should know that Trixie is actually in a similar path because she did go to law school.
Oh,
and now Trixie is in HR, so kind of similar path. So I could just feel how you're speaking to her really impacts how she's going through things, just reading through her questions and comments. Right, Trixie?
Crying right now. Oh, Trixie. Oh my god. And also, you know what I realize now, as you mentioned that one, thanks for that context, is that I went to law school because of my love for advocating for people, right? I'm just so passionate to fight for these people's rights. And I felt like, you know what, that same passion somehow, it was just redirected. And that's how I found myself in people in culture. Sometimes it's just a seed. And then from there, it just, maybe inside you, it's a passion inside you, and it's just being redirected from being a lawyer, to something else. Just like doctors, sometimes they thought they're gonna practice in the hospital, but they end up as administrators, right? So sometimes it's like that. Giving you hugs, Trixie.
Thank you, Miss Leyla. That was really inspiring. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Do we have other questions that we want to ask Leyla? Cara, have you got a question? You've unmuted.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure all of these have been so great, and I love listening to all of your learnings, and it's just like your leadership shining through, right? And so much that I resonate with. So, I loved when you were talking about, it's almost uncomfortable when you start to feel comfortable. You have this like natural curiosity and thirst for learning that drives you to have that courage to sometimes take something that could be perceived as a risk, right? Like doing something like, I know nothing about this. I'm actually wondering, like, once you took those leaps, did you ever have those moments? It sounds like you've really learned how to deal with that over time, but do you ever have that moment where you're like, wait, can I do this? Like, did you have those moments of doubt? And then, like, what did you either pull upon within yourself or like from your support network around you that kind of, allowed you to have the confidence to kind of continue through that? I would love to hear about that.
You know what, Cara, that feeling of, can I actually do this? Do I have what it takes? Can I overcome this failure? It's always there. A great analogy for me will be parenthood. For somewhere, you think you're ready, you plan for it, but then it's there, and really you just kind of have to deal with it when it comes. And for those with multiple kids, sometimes you thought you've learned how to do it with the first one, but with the second one, wow, it's like completely different strategy and approach. And you're constantly questioning, you're constantly shifting your approach, or your conversations are constantly learning. And it's the same, for me, it's like that same concept is applied also at work, I would say. And so I am constantly in that phase. Like when they asked me to be the COVID lead, I was not expecting it at all, and I don't know yet how it's gonna fare out, but I feel very supported, by the people who believed in me to put me in this position, for instance, and I'm ready to fail. I'm ready to maybe not meet some expectations, at the same time add value, because only through some trial and error can I get the right formula eventually.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cara. That was a great question. Was it a tough one, Leyla, or does Cara have to step up her game in terms of tough questions?
You guys asked the toughest questions, so yes, thank you for that, Cara.
Okay, great. Does anyone else have another question for Leyla? While people are thinking, I might ask you another question if that's okay, Leyla, because you've been really open around having such a growth mindset and accepting failure as, as part of that learning experience. Has there ever been an experience that you've had where you went in and you just thought, you know what, this is just a big mistake? Like, not that I wish I hadn't have done it, but has there ever been a role or a project or something that you've been a part of when you're actually in it, you realized it wasn't what you expected or what you wanted?
Yeah, one particular experience came to mind when you asked that, Natasha, and I would say my role before, like as a chief of staff, it was like a dream, right? I was with the CHRO, I would sit in a boardroom with the CEO, all these very influential leaders. And because I dreamt to become a COO, it was almost like, wow, this is such a crash course on how it's like to be a senior leader. So I was attracted to that. However, my failure was that I was forgetting my family because I was so attracted to the career and to all the privileges, to all these benefits that, I would go on vacation, and in the road trip, I would be on my phone, working, texting, and holiday, Mother's Day, I'm celebrating half like doing PowerPoint presentation, and half like when I get to the actual destination, that's when I would be actually there with my kids and my spouse. But then when we're back in the car, I'm not engaging anymore. And I caught myself, thankfully, through the intervention of my own family, my spouse and my kids, saying, you're not the same anymore. This is not you. And I could have made the choice to stay put or to actually, and that's when I started to reassess myself. What is truly valuable for me? This is not, like, to your point, like when your passion and value and what you do, it needs to align, and it's not aligning anymore. And so I had to, for a moment, my family did suffer with because I was prioritizing so much of my career at that point, and I didn't see it early on. Like, I was scared to let go of something that I wanted, with not knowing that what I really wanted was for my family to be there along with my journey. And so for me, that was a very, very big learning. And so when I say things about boundaries and finding the right culture, the right organization, for you, it came as a really huge learning. And maybe if I didn't learn that early on, I may have been in the same path. If I didn't listen to a very catastrophic, maybe consequence of my decisions at that time.
Yeah. Wow, that's so powerful, Leyla. I actually felt myself getting chills as you spoke about that. And I can see here that, from the chats, people are finding your story and your learning really, really inspiring.
Thank you.
I will open it up again to see if there is another question before I've got a few fun questions to finish with. But I think we definitely have time for another question if someone has one.
I see Kathy's baby, by the way. I see Kathy on this. Can I?
I feel like everyone's being a little...
Full support for Leyla.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have a question, Kathy?
I have tons, so I'll just schedule a one-on-one with Leyla. No, but really, super, super wow, inspired. I've been working with Leyla for I don't know how many months now, Leyla, but I'm discovering so much. Wow, I'm so honored to be working with you, Leyla. I look forward to our chica.
Thank you, Kathy.
Oh, everyone's thanking you for inspiring them. Okay, so let's do some fun questions. And if there is a question that comes up through that time, that's fine as well. So the first question is, where is your favorite place to go to in the Philippines? What's your favorite place in the Philippines?
Sonia's Garden was my ultimate favorite. It's the one in Tagaytay, and they grow their own their own organic ingredients and flowers. And if you haven't been there, I think that's like one of the most peaceful places, I would say. And then also the other one is Boracay, because my mom is from Aklan. And so I used to grow, I used to go to Boracay very often as a local there. So those were my two favorite places.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, and we know that food is very important to Filipinos. So what is your favorite Filipino food?
Oh, I love pork sinigang. Like super love that. And those you call it inihaw na isda, which is what do you call that? It's
Fried
grilled
fish.
fish. Yes, yeah, yes.
Right.
So those two, I love that because it actually is a great partner to each other. The sinigang and some fried and some fish. Yes.
I can see the people who've got their cameras on like smiling in the
Okay.
I think like dreaming of the food.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Do we have any other questions for Leyla? Well, we've got her with us.
I would like to hear from at least one brave soul as to like any kind of sharing that they have that triggered any thoughts that you have as you hear these various stories and questions.
I am a brave soul. No, I just want to share. I don't want to take up most of the time, but it's really very important to me what I heard from you, Leyla, when you really knew family was super important. But I can see that you're very driven in your career too. And, through your life, I can see it can work really. I think that's what makes us stronger if we know what we really value. And even though we're super dedicated to our work, our value is like our plants us strong in the ground, so to speak. So, yeah, I really see you as a strong woman leader. And I love it.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy. You also inspire me, just so you know. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for being brave to share that.
Oh, Kathy is our brave soul. Well, Leyla, what I will do is I will shortly hand over to Cara to kind of wrap up, but just wanted to say a massive thank you for, spending time in your evening to participate in our Career Month, because I think hearing from people as inspiring as you really gives a lot of ideas around how, people can think about their careers, what's important to them, where their fulfillment meets our purpose. And so we really, really appreciate it. I will hand over to Cara now, but yeah, just a massive thank you on behalf of myself.
Thank you, Natasha.
Yeah, it was so great to hear your story, and like I said when I was asking my question, there was a lot there that I felt like resonated so strongly. Really nice to hear like your path through it, but particularly all the self-reflection you've done as part of like that, which really seems to fuel your growth mindset that you have. But I think like Kathy said, the fact that you have these strong values, but then you've used that reflection to also change your direction, right? Like you had your heart set on being a lawyer and then found a different way to channel your passion, or you wanted to be a COO and you were this chief of staff that said, okay, this isn't aligning with my values. I feel like that takes a lot of courage, and I just love the way that, even though your path has kind of changed, you still have that North Star. And so just wanted to thank you for sharing your story with us. I feel like I got to know you better through this conversation.
Thank you, Cara.
Too, which makes me even happier that we have you working with us. So I look forward to continuing that relationship. But thank you again for your time today. It was lovely. And I am also really inspired by everything that you shared.
Oh, thank you, Cara. And it's such a privilege for me to spend some time with all of you. And for me, I just wanted to say with all of my experiences, like Roche is really for me the ultimate best place to be, where my value meets my work and allows me to be a mom, allows me to be a daughter, allows me to be myself and to grow, allows me to fail, and also to experiment and to succeed. And so I couldn't be more grateful for this opportunity to share this with you and to be part of Roche and to be part of the Roche affiliate in the Philippines somehow through my volunteer.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.